to whoever was the last speaker.
Are you on gallery view as your
Yeah,
setting?
yep, well,
Because I can still see everyone on my right-hand side.
okay, because I'm not. So I have to go back to my setting then?
Well, up on the top, you should see, does it say speaker view or gallery view on the top?
It doesn't give me that option. Not when I'm in share screen.
Exit out of share screen and then tell me what you see on the top there.
I see everybody, all the participants across the top, and it says, right, there we go. Let me try that. Then it's still, I only see one person.
I don't know if I can get to change that.
Is there a setting?
Trying to think if there would be.
I don't remember seeing that ever. I was thinking it was always controlled on the screen. So you guys will have to all talk fast so you can keep seeing your faces scroll through.
Yeah, I don't know of a way to change that right offhand, but in my settings it shows up everybody. I'm not sure if it has to do with your screen resolution, but
Okay.
I know they've been pushing out updates frequently.
Okay. Okay, well, I can see everybody now, so what I'll probably do is just pop out of the exhibit every once in a while. I'll share it and then come back out so I can at least, when we're having a conversation, I can see people that way.
Good evening, everyone.
Evening.
We have some guests tonight. Barbara's helping us by taking some notes. And Linda and Mike and Brad are all kind of there to help answer questions too as things come up along the way. And Brad to make sure we all stay online.
All right, can everybody hear me and everybody's ready to go?
Sure. Yep.
Okay, so it is 6 o'clock. My name is Mike Dreschmeyer, and I'm going to call the regular meeting of the Highland School Board of Education to order. This will be new for all of us here doing this virtually, so just a reminder that this is being streamed right now and recorded. So when you guys do talk, to try stating your name once in a while, just let everybody know if they're just listening who you are. The first item we're going to have is roll call by the clerk. And Andy, you're on mute yet.
Unmute. All right. Shimmick. It's going to be out of order. Esser.
Yes.
Mitchick.
Here.
Biba.
Yes.
Dreschmeyer.
Here.
Surrey.
Here.
Finish. Here.
All right, thank you. Next item is posting of the meeting given to the public pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 1984.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Esser and a second by Mitchick. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Oh, and you wanted roll call votes for these, right? All right. Andy, do you mind doing roll calls on these for me, please?
Okay. So right now, too?
Yep.
Like every time?
Yep.
Okay. Benish, yes. Biba,
Aye.
Dreschmeyer,
Aye.
Drury,
Yes.
Esser,
Yes.
Mitchell,
Yes.
Schimick.
Yes.
All right,
Everybody.
motion passes. Next item is approval of the minutes for the March 11th and 18th regular and special meeting.
Would anyone like me to pull them up for you to view?
No.
I'm good.
This is Ken Esser. I'll make a motion to approve both the regular and special meeting notice.
Schimick will make a second.
All right, we have a motion by Esser and a second by Schimick to approve the regular meeting and special meeting minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Andy, could you do a roll call vote on that?
Yep. Benish, yes. Biba,
Yes.
Dreschmeyer,
Yes.
Drury,
Yes. Yes.
Esser,
Yes.
Mitchell,
Yes.
Schimick.
Yes.
All right, that motion passes. Next item is approval of current expenses and vouchers payable.
Can you see that?
Yes.
Yes.
I'll just sort of scroll down through the pages that you have there. First page is all payroll related, as is true with most of the second page. But if you get to the 1003, there's a key benefit concepts. That's one of the required audits that we need to have to be in compliance with our OPEB. That's our liabilities for retirement kinds of pieces. And we have to do one of those every 3 years. So it's a part of the GASB rules. So that's a cost that we are required to have. Going on over to page 3, the ones that might be a little bit out of the normal would be, again, we have the clinic care, which is our school in Prairie du Chien, where we have a student who's attending. I believe they've moved most of theirs to online work. So some of that transportation will not be there going forward, but the tuition will be. The EMC bill for the $12,138 is for our property insurance. That's up about $1,800 from last year, but that's the way of the world of insurance right now. Our library books, $2,191. We pay for the library books to the Common School Fund. We get about $10,000 from the state that must be spent on our library media center. So that's part of that cost. Just point out our breakfast lunch program bills. This would be, more of this would be for when we were still operating in the real world. But we have about 78 kids that are participating in our meals program right now. But that is open to all kids. So we're hoping that that number might even increase over time because it's eligible. All kids are eligible and it's free to all kids through the federal programming that's available to us right now. So just skimming down, we have the ticket booth. This is not totally completed yet, but that's for some of the costs for one of the senior exit projects. Precision Control had another service bill there for some work that they have done. Our football reconditioning, that's again a bill that we pay annually with Rydell coming in, and they inspect every single one of our helmets, do whatever additional reconditioning work needs to be done on snaps, clips, face masks, anything to make sure that they meet all of the safety standards before the kids use them again in the fall. Our Skyward annual license fee, that's for all the work that Linda does in terms of payroll and budgeting and managing our accounts. Last page, there is a payment there to Warco, but that is for just the last payment that we had for the 2 weeks of routes that we did have in March, and some field trips and extracurricular things that were a part of, that actually were run yet in March. So that's the vouchers.
This is Greg. I'll make a motion to approve.
Esther, I'll make second that.
All right, we have a motion by Biba and a second by Esser for approval of the current expenses and vouchers payable. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, could we vote on that, Andy, with a roll call?
Anish, yes. Biba,
Yes.
Dreschmeyer, Drury,
Yes.
Esser,
Yes.
Mitchick, Schmick, I think they're both on mute.
Yes.
Mitchick,
Yes.
All right, motion passes. On to announcements and reports then. Josh, you're up first.
Josh, you're on mute.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for reminding me. Yeah, talk about a different world in which we live in today. But education has changed dramatically since even our last board meeting. So just some new things. We officially started our online or our distance learning this week. Some things are going very well. Teachers are working their tails off to get stuff ready, but obviously one thing that we are going to do is constantly learn from each other throughout this process, because I don't think it's any secret anymore that this is not going to be something that's just for a couple weeks here. I'm afraid we probably, who knows, I would love to see us be back in school, but the chances are probably slim. So this is something that we're going to do for a while. So we're all going to learn as we go. So we're adjusting and we're learning, and we're getting stuff out to students as best we can to help them move forward and get them ready for next year. And obviously our seniors get them ready to graduate and move on with their lives and careers. So I had a Zoom meeting about a week and a half ago with the seniors, and I was very proud of how their spirits were still very positive, and they still had their heads up and moving forward with their plans and everything, and getting them ready to just finish up the stuff here the last several weeks here. I think we have 30 days left for our seniors before the end of the school year, so 30 school days. So that's it on that note. April 16th, next week, is our annual Tornado Safety Awareness Day. So obviously with us not being in school, we're having teachers send out information to all our students about a tornado plan at their own houses. What they would do in case of an emergency or a tornado comes their way, of safety plans that they'll discuss with the teachers, and come up with a plan for each family, hopefully, if something were to happen here this spring. And then they're starting getting to spring sports. We obviously don't know. The WIAA has not said no and canceled the spring seasons as of yet. So we're keeping hope that there is a possibility that stuff maybe even could get moved back and they could still have a partial season. The chances are, who knows, but we're keeping hope that that's going to happen. But one thing they would like to do, they would like each school district to turn their ball field lights on for 20 minutes one night, just to show support for those spring teams that weren't able to play this spring. So if anyone has any objection or discussion on that, let me know. But that is a plan that they have coming up. And then the rest of the stuff that I have we'll be discussing tonight. So I'll just leave it at that for right now, unless you have questions or anyone has questions for me.
Thanks, Josh. Did you have a date on ball field lights, or is that just something they're thinking about doing?
Yeah, I don't have a date set yet. It's just a one-time thing, but we haven't set a date as to when we'd like to do it if we do it. But if anyone has obviously, you know, at first they come out and they didn't say, it's just like a weekly thing. So we weren't really big on that, but they want to just do a one-night thing. And so, but they haven't set a date on that yet, no.
Okay, anybody else have any questions for Josh?
Oh,
All
I
right,
should add too. Sorry, Mike. I should add too, just as you all know, we're delivering the food and we switched that to 2 days a week, Mondays and Wednesdays, and it's going very well. I got a crew here that comes in, makes the food, gets it all ready. We get it out there, and it's been going very smooth. So I'm very proud of our crew, and we're very happy that we can get some meals out to a lot of families that in this time it helps out a lot. So I was very happy for that.
Okay, thanks. Now you're up, Nancy.
Okay, I'll start with, I've got two pieces I want to just review real quickly. One was an email or a memo that I sent out last week just about how we're addressing some of the legal issues, some of those concerns that sort of pop up, things about, what were the things that I mentioned? Oh, copyright issues, some of the confidentiality issues in terms of how we're using our Google Classroom and Zoom and so forth. And then also the Fair Labor Standard Act and how we're trying to make sure when we have people so far from each other and yet asking a lot of each other or volunteering for a lot of things that we're just trying to put down some common parameters so that we don't find that we're running afoul with some of the laws that are out there. And it's, as I tried to say in the memo, it's a real fine line sometimes. There are some things that, you know, you're just going to have to do, and you'll discover later that, well, maybe we should have done it a little bit differently, but we'll fix it and we'll move forward and nobody will care. But on something like a Fair Labor Standard Act, those aren't people that I like to mess around with. So we're trying to find those things that we have to be really cautious about and make sure that we're communicating what that message is. And we're just going to keep trying to do the best we can to make sure in this crazy world that we're living by those rules that we really need to be attending to, and yet not being, you know, too terribly uptight about other things that make people's lives really, you know, more difficult than they are. So did anybody have any questions on those legal issues that I sort of was outlining for you?
No questions.
Was that a no question, Katrina?
Yes.
Okay, okay. And we've sort of, the way I've described it to the staff is that you've kind of got, you know, the crazy old lady rule that you can, you know, sort of beg forgiveness afterwards. She didn't know what she was doing, but she's gone now. So we just let us move on. Or those things that could go back and haunt you after I'm gone. So that's kind of the benchmark that we're trying to use on those legal issues. So just so you're aware, if you have questions on those things, by all means, keep us in the loop. I'm going to bump to another screen here real quick. This was the message that I sent out after I received it, about 5 minutes after I sent out what I thought was going to be your last packet. But this was just the advisory letter that we received from our organization, looking toward what are some of the things that we have to be thinking about for next year. And the big news of that memo really is that because the state is going to be facing a lot of the same economic issues that the rest of the world is going to, we have to be thinking about the potential for a budget repair bill coming in next year. And so they were offering some things that we might want to be thinking about in that prospect. So I did try to put together just a few numbers, and that probably makes a little more sense. What are some of those things that we should look at? And one is the revenue caps. So they suggested, instead of relying on what's in current law, which means we would get $179 per student increase in revenue cap, that we should consider a zero increase or a $50 reduction in what we'd be getting in a revenue cap. So what does that mean for Highland? These are very preliminary numbers, but it'd be about $55,000 less in our budget next year if we were at zero, and just about $70,000 if we were $50 less. So within the budget that we currently have, that wouldn't be devastating, because we have a lot of line items there that we've been building up over the years based on the referendum and whatnot. So if we had to pare back, whether it's maintenance or technology or other line items, we could probably do that part of it. So that wasn't a terribly scary number, but do note that even with the summer school, there's no change, because in the revenue cap, even though we get 11 students in our FTE for our membership count, in the revenue cap, they only let you take 40% of that. So our revenue, our membership count for revenue purposes would only go down from 307 to 305, and they hold you harmless that first year. So for next year's budget, 2021, there would be no change in our revenue cap if we lost our summer school opportunity. The problem that comes in is when we look at equalization aid, and that's where in the equalization aid, they count those 11 FTEs of students from summer school as a one-for-one count. So equalization aid would go down $76,000 if we can't have summer school. So that's going to come up, and we'll be talking about that in a couple different scenarios. But they also recommended that you might want to underspend this year's budget to put that in fund balance so you have some of that expenditure for next year. That's certainly a possibility. And when you spend it next year, then you'd get aid on it, but you won't get aid on it until 21, 22. So I wanted you to see what the impact of that would be. So if, based on what I have projected right now, you didn't spend $50,000 that's currently in your budget, then it would increase the state, it would increase the local taxes by about $23,000, because whatever you don't get in state aid under the revenue cap is going to go to local tax increases. So if we didn't have summer school and you underspent your budget, then the impact on the local taxpayers could be almost $100,000. And we haven't seen it increase for a while. So that's just something you want to kind of weigh, and hopefully we can minimize what would happen in terms of that particular issue. I've looked at some summer school kinds of projections there too, and we can talk about that as we go through the rest of the meeting as well. But basically, I still think you want to tax to the maximum for next year under your revenue cap. And if you want to put money aside next year in fund balance, I'd strongly encourage you to have a particular purpose, like a summer school, for example. If we can't do it in June, but maybe we could do it in July and August, because any summer school, June, July, or August, still counts on our equalization aid for next year. So if we could get it in the summer, that would make sense to just move that spending from this year to next year, because we'd get that additional aid for it. But I'm not sure about July or August either. So that would be a potential consideration. That was kind of new information. And so I wanted to share those with you. Does anybody have questions or want to ask a little bit about next year's funding? Because we really, that's not a lot about our agenda tonight, but I didn't feel we should talk about this year's end of year spending without at least knowing the most current picture for next year.
I think that's helpful, Nancy, and it always sounds easy to not spend money and save it for next year, but there are implications of doing that as well.
Yes.
Did you have anything else for this report then, Nancy, or?
Nope, those are the two pieces, so I'm done with that.
All right, then we'd be on to the Transportation Committee report. Ken, do you want to take care of that?
I'm going to defer it to Nancy based on where we're at with Warco and what we've been hearing from, I guess, the state.
And I did share with you the transportation update that we that I had shared earlier. Do you want to see that again? Have it in your paper. How many of you have your paperwork in front of you? Were most of you able to print it?
Yeah.
Or no?
I have all the documentation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Greg, do you have it? And if do you all see
I'm
the
good.
little, do you see that reaction button down on your control panel, everybody? Do you have a button that says reaction? The kids love this one because if you press that, you can give yourself a thumbs up if I ask a question. So, hey, that's a great tool for the kids. Okay, super. If I got your paperwork in front of you, then I won't necessarily always put it up on the screen because I can't see you when I'm doing that. So that I had another teleconference yesterday. Was that we're doing so much of that, it's hard to keep track. But the entire Quarles and Brady legal team gave us a real quick down and dirty legal brief again yesterday. And their message was the same as what Eileen's message had been, was that just, don't be hasty. There are a lot of unanswered questions yet out there. So just hang on. They still are saying that your particular contract does matter. So we did pay what we owe in terms of the services that have already been provided, but the legal world is still telling us that at a minimum, if you're going to make that payment, you're going to want to have all of those answers to those questions that right now nobody's able to answer. So we're sort of in that piece. The only difference about the transportation piece is the CARES Act, that just the $2 trillion relief bill is out there, and we're going to talk about that in a minute too. But that does say that we would get the extra funding as long as we pay all of our staff and our contractors to the greatest extent practicable. So that could be used to interpret that, well, there's a contractor, so if you want your federal dollars, you need to pay that. Or it could be used by the Wisconsin state legislature because they're getting lobbied heavily by the various companies out there that provide transportation to actually, in essence, insist that school districts pay that. So I think there's a lot that we don't know yet, but when I've done my budget work, I have included the assumption that we'd probably pay for the routes, but I'm not saying that we're going to have to, but I'm making sure that I'm hanging on to that money in the budget because that still could be something that we might end up being dictated and told you have to if you want to access those other funds. So that's where I'm at right now.
All right, does anybody have any questions on that? Otherwise, we'll go on to the Building and Grounds Committee report. And a lot of those I think we're going to talk about later too, Ken.
Yep. So as far as building and grounds, there's not, I guess most of it's going to be later in the agenda for what I can see, most of it. Do you want to touch on it now, or Nancy, or how do you want to handle that?
I'm fine with waiting if you want to wait. I don't think there's anything that won't be addressed as we get into the other items.
Okay, I'm fine with doing it that way then.
Sounds good. Then we're on to item 7, which is policy development and review. And I think first we're going to talk about a couple of the policies we have for our board meetings, and then under new business, we can act on those. So the first one, Nancy, is on the agenda preparation and dissemination.
And the reason for that was just those two actually go pretty much hand in hand because by hosting our meetings virtually, we need to have a way to allow the public to have access to the meeting, which means we're doing the live streaming of it. However, it's difficult to live stream and allow for public interaction because if you give access to the full Zoom that everybody in this room, our room has, then there's no way that you can control some of the other ancillary activity that could be going on outside. Everything from language to dress to confidentiality kinds of concerns. So it's really difficult to control that. There's no expectation, there's no law that requires public input. Obviously, I think good public policy is that you allow for public input, but in this particular case, it's really difficult to provide that, especially in the time frame that we had to try to get this put together. And also given that we haven't had a lot of interest on our public to come and talk to you, I opted to give them the ability to email into us, to call into us, to reach out to Mr. Tucker if they had difficulty accessing the streaming. And since it's going to be a temporary piece, my recommendation is that we suspend temporarily the pieces on the agenda that are difficult to do virtually. One is for everybody to stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance, which most people, you sort of just get settled in and then everybody tips their computers over trying to stand up. And the second one then is of course the public access. And it's just, we just didn't have a way in the time frame to allow it for someone to speak to you directly through Zoom without opening ourselves to a lot of other kinds of issues. So I do want to, as we're talking about that though, just mention that you are exempt as an essential governing body from the rules of the 10 in a room. You're still expected to be able to be doing the social distancing, but you could meet live if you wanted to. So as we go forward, if this would end up being something that extends much longer, you have to tell me, are you comfortable with this kind of an environment? Or if you would prefer meeting live, I'm not encouraging that this month in particular, or maybe that, when we're in the peak of what's going on, I think we're safer doing it this way. But you can meet personally if you wanted to. It's just a matter of safety at this particular point in time. And eventually we could have, 4 of you in the school building and allow up to 10 visitors or whatever number you felt was safe, practice social distancing, and still have 3 of you coming in from the outside, zooming in. That would also be an option. The only thing that I would recommend we not do is to try to hold a closed session in a virtual environment. And I'm not seeing anything that would require that over the next few months. So I would just recommend that you not do that. It's just really hard to maintain confidentiality when you've got, my husband's out in the other room listening to everything I'm saying. It's just difficult to hold a confidential closed session in a virtual environment. So I don't plan on calling any closed sessions when this is the case. So.
I think that all makes sense. I'll make a motion to approve the suspension of policy 171.2.
I'll second. It's Greg.
We have a motion by Mitchick and a second by Biba to suspend policy 171.2 and policy 187 on the agenda preparation, meeting dissemination, and public participation. Is there any discussion? And the only thing I wanted to add as part of the discussion on this, Nancy, and we've talked about it, is if there is public that does want to approach the board or has issues with the board that they want to present here, that we figure out a way to make it available to them either here at the library or Zoom for part of the meeting or something like that, or like you said, have the email available that they can present and be read at the meeting if need be. All right, if there's no more discussion, Andy, do you want to do a roll call on that?
Benish, yes. Biba,
Yes.
Dreschmeyer,
Yes.
Drury,
Yes.
Esser,
Yes.
Mitchick,
Yes.
Schimick.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Next item is approving the grading practice and setting student GPAs for second semester. And Nancy, you had sent this out to everybody as well.
So let me, and I do want to, I think I will draw up, just let me share this real quickly. Yes, sure. Okay, we are at, can everyone see that? Because that, I just want to make sure that I'm not sure, this copy is, the corrected copy got posted, but you may have a slightly different paragraph right under middle school and high school. I just want to make sure you have the most recent version of that. I'll just sort of, I'm going to have Josh come in and talk about this one as well. Just trying, let me point out the things we want to do. On the elementary side, obviously grades, and certainly grade point average doesn't matter for the elementary kids. Can you still hear me okay?
Yep. Okay.
I get a message every once in a while that my internet's unstable, so that makes me nervous. What we want for the elementary is for the teachers to maintain as good a sense as they can of where their kids are at, so that they can share that information with the next year's teacher, so the kids can begin, regardless of what grade they're going into, with a material that they need to be having covered. In the middle school, again, the grades are, GPA does not have an impact. The grades for the middle school kids technically could be a factor in whether there's a retention or not, but everybody knows that retaining middle school children is not, there are worse consequences than having them move on to the next grade. But there are some consequences for 8th graders going into the next year, especially on the eligibility piece. So those were some things that we wanted to continue the option for an extended summer school for any middle school kids that we really didn't feel were ready for going into their freshman year, to try to extend their learning a little bit longer. At the high school level, again, the issue for us there is that we do know that for some students, their GPA does really matter, and they're concerned about that for scholarships, and they're concerned about that for the Wisconsin academic scholarship, for our freshmen, sophomores, and juniors. Seniors, this doesn't matter, because those decisions are all based after 7 semesters. So this is over for seniors. Their GPA and so forth, that's already set. Valedictorian and salutatorian are already picked. But for the younger kids, for the student that's got the 4.0 and they're interested in wanting to do really well, the concerns about what this fourth 9 weeks might mean for them was a little bit unsettling. And we just wanted to be able to tell everybody very clearly that your health, or as a student, or your family's health, or your access to the internet, or your ability to get to that, or whatever is happening in your life, should not play a factor in whether or not what your GPA is if you are in that situation in one of those competitive kind of pieces. So our recommendation is then that we use the third quarter grade as the semester grade that will balance then that we'll use to calculate all of the GPA, because everybody was in school third 9 weeks, everybody had the same opportunities, and that's what we're going to use in terms of establishing the grade point average for the underclassmen as they move forward. The consequence for a student that did have an F, however, in third quarter, and then also fails in fourth quarter, is that they would then not receive credit, obviously, for that particular class. And then again, that could impact their eligibility in the fall for extracurricular and athletic kinds of things. In general, we talked with teachers again today. It's a real hard piece for them because they don't want to add stress. They don't want this to be something that's driving kids crazy if they're looking at the grade. But at the same time, they really want kids to have the opportunity to learn as much as they could possibly learn in this strange kind of environment. So that tension is always going to be there. But if you look at the scale, it basically is anybody that got any sort of a passing grade for the third 9 weeks, excuse me, they're going to be fine, and they're going to get credit for the course. We just need to keep finding ways to keep them motivated to keep learning as much as they can. The only kids that could potentially fail and not get credit would be kids that had failed the third quarter and weren't making any effort to try to pass this fourth quarter. So I'm going to unshare the screen here for a minute and open that up to Josh for comments, and then just discussion among everybody. Josh, what did I leave out?
One thing I'll add to that at the high school level is there are courses that are advanced placement for some students. So those courses are still going to have things that need to get met. So there's going to be a little more work because they're still taking that test here in May for the advanced placement courses, the students that are in those classes. However, the powers at be that give those tests are recognizing that most schools had, actually the vast majority of schools in Wisconsin missed out on part of third quarter and all of fourth quarter, where we've been lucky that we started when we did, that we're missing a lot less school than as far as in the building school than they are, but they are adjusting those tests accordingly. So that was one nice thing to find out and be able to work with when preparing these kids for those tests. So, but those students are going to have a little more work as they probably should for that type of class. But yeah, I'll also open it up for and try to answer any questions you guys have.
So the first question I have is, it was brought to my attention, and someone had asked me now, and correct me if I'm wrong, so like the middle school, like in the third quarter they had Spanish, but during this virtual learning they're not doing anything with Spanish. Is that correct?
Correct, Greg. So they will get credit no matter for their Spanish. Well, it really doesn't matter at that level as far as their credit, but they can do some stuff with Spanish if they so choose. But we decided to take that off their plate and focus on the core classes. So Spanish will not be an expectation for any of the 8th grade students.
So my follow-up to that is, if one of those students had an F in third quarter in 8th grade, what does that do to their eligibility in the fall for extracurricular? We're not counting it towards it?
Correct. So if they had an F in third quarter Spanish, and since we're not having Spanish, that will not be on the table for them that will not be an issue as far as eligibility.
Okay, so I'm just, that maybe was something, you may get that question from someone I had asked, just seen it tonight, actually. Someone had asked me that question because asked if I'd bring that up if there was an opportunity, or I was gonna just email you, Josh, on that. But since we're talking about it, that answers that, I guess. So
Yeah, that would be the same for like if they were in like art class, you know, the same for those classes that are not core. So
got it.
other questions or discussion points on that? And this has been extremely, you know, I've gotten, as far as the other principals in our district that, or our conference, this is a big one that people have changed so many times in different districts. They start like 2 weeks ago, this is what we're gonna do. You talk to them 2 days later, no, we're changing to this. You talk to them 2 days later, we're changing to this. So, I mean, everyone's in the same boat as how are we going to get credit to the kids and not, you know, it's a catch-22 situation sometimes because you got parents that have 4 kids at home. You got parents that are in the medical field that are, and you know, a million different things can happen. So we're trying the best we can to make it fair for everybody. And this is the best way we can see do it.
Greg, do you think it would help if, because this paper would become then a part of the public record, would it be helpful if we added on that middle school that courses that are not being held in the fourth quarter will not be factored in eligibility decisions or something to that effect?
I think that would help. I mean, I just think that, you know, if that carries over to high school also with some of that, but I mean, yeah, I just think that to clear it up. I mean, and I shared too is, you know, I think, there's stress out there. I mean, obviously, and I actually had mentioned, I said, no one asked for this to happen. It's just, everybody's trying to adapt to this. So I've seen it firsthand this week with my own kids and trying to manage what they're doing, and it's tough. It really is. And so the grades, yeah, they stress about that, you know, and I think parents, for the most parents do too. So any way you can clear that up, if it's going to, yeah, to get that out, I think that so parents and students understand how that we're going to run with that. I think that would be huge.
Well, and we're not shouting it from the rooftops because we still want kids to work as hard as they can.
Absolutely.
But basically, if whatever grade they got for the third 9 weeks, if it was a B+ or a B- or a C-, whatever, as long as they pass the fourth quarter, they're getting that B+ or that B- or that C, whatever it is, it's in essence their semester grade then. In large part because we recognize and we want the teachers to have the flexibility in their classrooms to be able to say, you can do a little, let's try to keep kids motivated to do as much as they can, but also to allow teachers and families to say, you know, this week we just couldn't get more than 2 done. I know the goal was to do 6 of those 8 things. We could only get to 2. And the teacher's gonna be able to say, that's fantastic. Thanks for letting me know. And the next week they might get all 8 of them done. It's just the world in which we live. But it will be better for every kid that can learn as much as they can, because next year is going to come and they are going to be in that next level of class and they are going to be back at it. And just to not have given it their best shot to learn as much as they can isn't good for them, and it won't pay off for them in the end. So it's just encouraging families to be patient, to take a deep breath, to say we're just going to do the best we can. And so we're trying to take the stress off while still giving people really quality things to be doing. So we're going to be learning every day. We're learning something new.
Well, and I agree. And I had mentioned to Josh too, and I think and that's what we got to keep doing, is just providing clarity. And I mean, again, I'm using my own example with my own kids. I've got one of them that's eating up this virtual learning. I mean, he loves it. He says this is the best thing ever. He's a good student to begin with, and he works hard. And he said, I can do this at my pace. I can get farther ahead. I can take a break. I can do what I want. I got another one that, is kind of similar, and another one that really struggles with the virtual part of it. They need the one-on-one, and they want to do a good job. So this, I think, that definitely affects all of us and all of our kids and districts, kids and families. And like Josh said, you got parents working, you got parents trying to become teachers and all that, and they're just trying to make sure that at the end. So I think seeing the grading system will help some, but at the same time, just to keep everybody engaged, because I think you're right. This is not a 1 or 2 week deal here. This is, we're in it for the long haul, and we're learning lots as we go. So.
Yeah. Well, and Josh is going to be sending something out for at least the middle school families tomorrow too, that I think will help, because the Zoom that Josh called this morning for the middle school staff helped them work through then some of the scheduling issues. So they've come up with some additional tools that they're going to make available for families, some sample schedules, for example, of how kids might, manage their time over all of the classes. The teachers have done a really good job, if you've looked in the Google Classrooms at all, for their courses to lay out what kids need to be doing. But for families and kids, when you've got 6 or 7 of those things coming at you, to put it all together can be difficult. So Josh and the group have put together some sample schedules, and they've also put together a way that the teachers can make suggestions about how much maybe they want to tackle every day within that week. And then they're going to put it in one common schedule that's in each of the classes. So you can look in one spot and see virtually everything that the kids need to be working on across the subjects. And I think that will be another great step for for the families and the kids, so that, like you said at one point, Chris, so they're afraid they're not getting everything done. And if we can put it on one schedule for them, then they can be confident that they've got, and just check off what they're doing. So
I think that'd be really helpful. I don't know if others agree. I think that'd be really helpful, just because we got a lot of cases where parents are not there at home or during the day, and they're not exactly sure. They'd like to have something to mark, that they could mark off easy and say, hey, did you do this? Are you doing this? I mean, so yeah, I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah, a big thing, I think, as Nancy said, for everybody is having a schedule for your kids. And for some of them, you're going to need to have times on that schedule, and I know my kids specifically, my wife and my kids put a schedule together, and it made a world of difference for them as far as, and she puts right in there, you're going to eat lunch here, take a break here, just like as if they were in school, and unfortunately, your most vulnerable kids when we're in the school building are still your most vulnerable kids outside the school building. So we have to make sure that we're trying everything we can, especially students with special needs, to make sure we're getting all the resources to them that we can. Unfortunately, nothing's perfect, right? So, but putting kids on a schedule because they're not ready. I think the toughest age group, what I'm finding out for this, is our middle school kids. The elementary kids, they have one core teacher for the most part. So they have one teacher giving them the information that they need. The high school kid, they're at an age that they can do a lot more stuff on their own, and they can, most of them kind of like this virtual school stuff other than not being able to see their friends. The middle school kids already, they're in that between stage where they're not ready for either one. They're not ready to be on their own yet. And they're in a first experience for the most part, with a bunch of different teachers. So for them trying to balance all these things at a middle school age is tough on them. So I think they're the ones that are having the hardest time adjusting. Now this is the first week. It's going to get better. There's going to be adjustments that we make as we go. But, I found out anyway, if you can get your kid and have your kid get on a schedule and they follow that, that'll be a ton of help for them. And the other thing is that we want to stress to every parent and to their student, obviously, their kid, if you have an issue, if something's not going right, email the teacher, talk to them, and because that's the only way they're going to know they need to make some changes. So, and the change might be different for every kid, and that's fine. That's what we want. We're going to make it the best we can for each kid. And, if there's something that's, hey, this is too much, I can't get this much done, I have this issue, whatever, okay, talk to them. what can we do? How can we make this better? What do we need to change? That is the biggest thing that'll help, I think, everybody. So that's the message that we want to make sure that we get across, and we're having teachers do that. So, you know, we want every parent to let the teacher know, have the student, let them know where he's struggling, what can I do, how can we change things? So if we can get there, I think that'll help a lot.
Nancy, since this is policy then for the board, we should make a motion to approve this for this semester.
Yes, with the addition then that we will add that for the middle school courses that we may have a couple, we might at the high school too, I'm individually maybe, but just that any courses that were not offered for fourth 9 weeks will not be included in the in GPA or eligibility issues.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Schmick will second.
Motion by Esser and a second by Schmick to approve the grading practice and setting student GPAs as presented. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Andy, could you do a roll call?
Benish, yes. Biba,
Yes.
Drushmeyer, Drury,
Yes. Yes.
Esser,
Yes.
Mitchick,
Yes.
Schmick.
Yes.
All right, that motion passes. Next item then, Nancy, is the fiscal year 20 budget review.
And I'm going to get to that, I promise. Come on, there we go. At this point, I'm basically interested in having you have a sense of where we're at from our current level of expenditures and what I think may be savings within the budget. These additional options for potential expenditures we'll talk about when we get to that portion of the budget later. But right now, we do have a new run, which includes these vouchers. I just did not get the chance today to get to put those numbers in there. So I'm going to rely on the ones that we had previously put together. But we do have a fair amount of what could be untargeted money yet. But now this does include the $35,000 that we'd had in maintenance and so forth for unspecific purposes. So that makes it look a little slightly smaller number. But we do have several other things coming in that we've talked about before. Our revenue is, we have some more revenue than what we'd originally projected. The open enrollment costs, we had some families move. And so our open enrollment costs, we have almost a $20,000 savings there. We knew we had a buffer in the HRA, our portion of the insurance deductible that we pay. And I checked that out again today, and it's at $21,000 right now. So that could even be a little bit higher. We didn't have an Odyssey of the Mind program, which is saving some. And the Title IV budget, we were able to claim expenses that were already a part of our regular budget rather than expend new money for the Title IV 10,000. So that would be available. In an email that I just got today, though, from the Department of Public Instruction, I think we're going to get flexibility on when we have to spend the title money, which would, if what I read is true, it could be that we could move this revenue over to next year. If we can afford to make those expenditures without claiming that 10,000, then we'd have 20,000 that we could claim next year. So that may be a $10,000 if that to offset costs for next year. So rather than include that in money to spend this year, maybe we would be better off moving that to next year, but we can talk about that later. We're saving money on our lawn care yet because we're going to be doing that hopefully in-house. We've got some charter money that we'll be able to save. I'm going out on a limb, Josh, sorry, and I don't think we're going to have spring softball and baseball, so we would have officials that costs related to running that program that would be there. And the transportation, even if we paid for the routes that we would have normally run, we'd still have an $8,000 saving on transportation. So that looks like, you know, a fair amount of money there. And then on top of that, we have summer school. If we are not able to expend money on summer school, that's about $30,000 that would either be out of this year's budget and either spent next year or not spent at all. And then the Title I funds that I'd mentioned out of the CARES Act for us would be about $21,000. But the federal government has until the end of April to put their expectations together, which means that we'll get to the Department of Public Instruction in Wisconsin the 1st of May. And then they have to write their grant and make application. So the prospect of us knowing how we can use that money, we probably won't know until June. By the time Wisconsin writes its grant application, it goes to the federal government, it gets approved. So this money might not be available to us this year. In fact, it may be better if we didn't get it until next year because it's just another unspent potential for us this year if it does come in earlier than that. So I guess the bottom line is that we have some flexibility. If you do want to move some money into just not spend it and put it into fund balance for next year for targeted costs, you could do that. If you want to spend the money on some of the things that we know we could use, you can do that and then get state aid on it. And you also have Fund 46 that you could put money in to save for future maintenance projects, but you won't be able to access those funds for about 3 years yet. So that would just be the only downside of that one. But we do have some money to work with. So I just wanted you to have that picture before we talk about some of the other things that we're going to be looking at. So.
That sounds good. Does anybody have any questions that we don't need any action on? Do you want to go through the work schedules and salary payments next then?
And again, if you have the copy of the packet that I sort of sent out with that, I won't try to put that up. It's just so much language. But I did try to just frame it a little bit for you so you know what's happening. We have a lot of staff under contract for this year with the expectation that they would be doing their jobs all year long. Well, that's not exactly how it's gone. And we do have, right now, we have almost everybody back to working pretty much full-time, but a lot of it is obviously virtual. We have essential workers that are working just full-time wherever they can be working. Josh and Brad spend a good amount, and Mike spend a good amount of their time actually at the site in the building, but that's just the 3 of them. And they, you know, we have a few people that come in to work on meals, but other than that, most of our work is virtual work. And our aides are doing a lot of work with the special ed teachers and with the regular ed teachers, as well as with special ed kids. They're scheduling individual Zoom meetings to help kids work through problems, questions they may be having. And then we also have a pretty extensive professional development project where support staff can, if they can't reach kids for a while, they can hop online, do their CPR training. They can do some trauma-sensitive schools training. They can do some training on autism. And I'm hoping by when we come back after Easter Monday, that by that Tuesday, custodial staff and aides will also have a whole complement of other courses that they can take online for all sorts of things related to safety issues around being a custodian, cleanliness issues around, you know, working in the kitchen. So we're trying to maximize the time. If there isn't something that we can have one of the support staff doing, they are using the time then to get better at their craft and to learn some things. And all of the programs that we have our certificate program. So they do the work online, they take their quizzes, and then log their hours, and we get the verification that they completed that training. So that's how we're looking at that part of it. But first of all, I wanted to just review if you have any questions on what the original Families First Act or the CARES Act, the impact on us at the school. First, the Family First Act is the one that gives emergency paid leave to staff, as well as extended emergency family medical leave, the FMLA for folks. And I'll be real honest, I'm not seeing us probably using much of that because to get the emergency paid leave, which is up to 10 days of a person's time, they actually have to have a doctor or medical place confirm that they have to be out for those 10 days due to the coronavirus. And unfortunately right now, even if someone's not sick, they're not giving people the test. So getting the verification for it is a little bit more difficult, though we might have a couple that might fall into that piece. And if it is, they get the emergency leave. We just don't take their sick day. We don't have them use a sick day for that. The only benefit to the district on that is that we don't have to pay FICA on that salary that we pay under an emergency leave. So it's a little bit of a very small cost savings. But I don't see too many people using the FMLA because if we're able to offer them full-time work, if they take the FMLA leave, then they only get paid 67% of their time, 2/3 of their salary. So that's not, in a pinch, it might be something that someone might have to do, but for the most part, I don't see us doing that portion at all. The other piece that was outlined in the Families First is if we do have furlough time, and you did a month ago allow us to offer 10 days of paid administrative leave, and that's worked well for us to bridge our support staff from when they were working to when we had our system in place where they can now be working with kids and doing professional development. Those days will not be counted on our workers' compensation premium because those were days that are deemed they weren't in danger of maybe having a workers' comp claim. So it's just going to lower the amount of money in our wages that we have to pay a premium on. So it's a little bit of a cost savings on that one. So Family First Act, some good things for folks, but again, for our staff, not a lot of application. The CARES Act, though, is a little more, something that's giving direct funding to schools. We've talked about that some. $21,000 is my best guess right now is probably what we would be getting. But the catch then is that the one line that if you are going to access those funds, you shall, to the greatest extent practicable, continue to pay your employees and contractors during the period of any disruption or closures related to coronavirus. So that's not been defined. No one can tell me what that means to the greatest extent practical. I think the state government may come in and define that. We may get better direction on that somewhere down the road, or it may just end up being a local decision. What do you think your budget allows you to do? And you make that call. But right now, I just don't know what that means. But I'm guessing that we probably would want to access those additional funds. So we would want to be doing that. So that's part of the rationale for why I'm recommending we just pay everybody's salaries, because number one, they're working. Number two, if we want to be a part of the CARES Act, we would be costing money if we would lay off people at this particular point. And the CARES also has that enhanced unemployment piece. And as long as we have people who have the ability to work even through teleconferencing, or they receive sick days or paid leave in another sort, they're not eligible for that unemployment compensation and the enhanced unemployment. Because that comes back and we end up paying a big portion of that then anyway, even though that's not totally defined on the CARE Act. Who's going to pay for that enhanced $600? But for schools, the problem would be, especially if this runs through the end of the school year, their unemployment then would run, of course, through the summer as well. So my recommendation at this point is if we can avoid having anybody going out where they're eligible for the unemployment, especially the enhanced unemployment, that's in the district's best interest, as long as we feel we're getting value for the time that people are investing in the work that they're doing. So that's kind of the background. That's what we know about the legislation, at least as yet, in terms of making sense. And I don't think it's surprising at all that this legislation was really designed for not public employees like we have in a school setting. In fact, there are some components that we aren't, because we're a public entity, we can't even qualify for. It is designed for employers and workers that don't have the system in place or the revenue coming from tax dollars. And so they have no choice but to lay people off. And so that's why it doesn't fit us in every particular case. So just questions on that background or sort of what the history is of this? I'm sorry, I'm dumping on you guys. I realize that, but sometimes that's the nature of it. So given that, I outlined then, for teachers, support staff, administrative support staff, and administrators. And at some point in time, you may want to defer the administrative support staff and the administration to the finance committee and just have them talk more and go through some more examples. But if at least at a minimum, you were comfortable with the teachers, and I do note I'm including extended contracts, extracurricular contracts should be paid in full, and then the support staff, that they all would be working as either assigned or doing professional development, or they could decline some work if we felt that was an option for us, and take unpaid leave as long as the safer at home order is still in place. And it's not the saver at home, by the way. You caught the miscues on that one. But so if we want to talk maybe about those two pieces first, the teachers and the support staff, questions, comments, thoughts, ideas? I did share with you a little bit of sort of what's happening out in the bigger world. Not everybody's made up their mind in all of those things yet, but again, some people have much larger staffs than what we do too. And we have 15 people that are on our support staff. So it's a little easier for us to have work for them to do, whether it's helping us with the meals or doing outside work now when the weather gets nicer. But they really are doing a nice job in terms of helping kids out too, doing the tutoring and contacting families and keeping up with what the kids need to be doing their classes so that they can help them.
I think that looks good, Nancy, to keep everybody working and getting paid as much as we can and keep things productive and keep them busy with tasks at hand. It sounds like everybody is busy as ever with a lot of these things. It's more work than it would be just teaching normally, so.
And then of course on the administrative support staff too, and again, I don't need decisions on those. I just wanted you to know those folks are all, that crew is working all of the time. And they've worked through the whole series of things, even when other people sort of, stepped a little bit away. So I just want to let you know, and I certainly thank all of them. They're putting a lot of time and energy in. I can't imagine what Brad's life has been like over the last while with trying to get everybody linked in and so forth. And Barb, I just said, hey, I'm sorry, but you're essential. You don't get to take any time off right now. So, I mean, those are the kinds of things. And Mike and Linda, as always, just trying to keep those things. Sharon, our nurse, she's our director of, she's our liaison with Iowa County. So if we have any kind of question about, can this person be at work? Who do we have to isolate? Who needs their temperature taken? She's there for that. And Sharon Wolf too, directing the food piece. So those essential people, I just wanted to go on record that they all really are doing above and beyond. So and my guess is not many of them are going to be able to get all of their vacation time in. A couple people have, some of those positions have the ability to have some vacation days paid out, others don't. But so again, we can talk about it, or you can refer it to finance and go from there. Katrina, was that a question or a clap? Okay, thank you, bravo, there we go. We can all do that. We could, kudos to everybody, applause. Thank you, Katrina.
Nancy, maybe that's where it needs to go is, I don't know how everybody else feels, but first of all, thank everybody that, that word essential is, I got labeled that too. And I guess that's, first it feels good. Yeah, but no, thanks to everybody that is doing the extra, but maybe, maybe it's worth a discussion at a finance committee setting, to just address all that. I mean, you have to see where all this stuff goes, but I think it's, just my opinion, I don't know how everybody else feels, but that's might be worthy to discuss some of that, see what we can do in those situations for those folks. So
I would agree with that. I think it's something, we're obviously in unprecedented times, and I think to make a change for especially these ones that are working above and beyond, I think it's definitely something we can discuss at the finance committee meeting, and unless people want to discuss it now and take action now.
Well, I didn't develop specific things because I sort of wanted to get a little bit of a read of whether or not, I can develop some ideas and bring those to a finance committee, and then we'd have something a little more to take a look at too. So I was sort of, my guess is where you might want to take that, but
I'd be okay with if you develop something, Nancy, and bring it back to the finance committee.
okay.
And I think that'd be good, Nancy, for especially some of these that are kind of changes in policy to address through there.
Right.
As far as the work schedule and how you have that set up with the teachers and support staff, do you want some approval based on that, especially like the extracurricular contracts?
Yes, that would be good. If you could approve the teachers and the support staff portion of that, that would be helpful. Then I can communicate that out to everybody, and we can go from there. And like I said in the note, the spring sports aren't the only extracurricular contracts that weren't totally completed. Forensics, for example, where that was all canceled before they could do their district and their state tournament, but they hosted their sub-district, so they put in a ton of time and energy on that. Spring baseball and softball are the only programs that can actually run some summer practices and some summertime, which they don't get paid anything for. I do have, though Nurse Sharon has kept our coaches up on CPR and the AED training and whatnot, there are some additional modules that I could have assigned to the coaches to ask them to sort of take a look at. There was one on Title IX, for example, that I thought might be good for all of our coaching staff to take a look at too. So it isn't that, again, these folks have been doing what they're doing for a long time, and even baseball and softball right now, they are in season. They can't practice, but they are in contact with the kids. They're calling them. They're helping them set up individual workout schedules, that sort of stuff too. So it just hard midway through to try to prorate, and anybody that's done any coaching, you know, it's not really just an in-season job anyway. It goes beyond that, so. Now, if it had happened during football season, maybe we could have. Is that Mike? No, okay.
This is Todd. I would make a recommendation to approve the teachers and support staff as presented. The salary.
I'll second. This is Greg.
We have a motion by Mitchick and a second by Biba to approve the work schedules for teachers and support staff and extracurricular contracts as presented. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Andy, could you do a roll call? You're on mute right now, Andy.
Benish, yes. Biba.
Yes.
Judgmeyer.
Yes.
Drury.
Yes.
Esser.
Yes.
Mitchell.
Yes.
Benish.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Next item then is review and approve end of year expenditures. Nancy, do you want to pull that list back up and we can kind of
Yep.
see what we'd want to approve tonight and what we want to wait on?
Nope, that's the vouchers. I'm trying to get to it. Didn't I have it up once already?
You did.
Well, let's go find it. Can you see that?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, there we go. I can make it, there we go. I can make it a little bit bigger. And this too, any aspects of these, we can refer back to the Buildings and Grounds Committee then too, to have more discussion. But let's just take a look at what some of them are there, and then we can decide what to go with. The pre-order on the salt, we've done that now, and I think that would certainly be something that we would like to continue. So that would be one that you could approve at this point. The lawnmower versus the tractor, and we did get, we have several bids, and they are attached to, I shared with you a fair number of them, and they're also all attached to the board agenda. But I'm not ready to make a recommendation one way or the other, and I think Josh and Mike, are you two both wishing that would have, you want that to be a discussion for Buildings and Grounds, correct?
Yes, I think we do. I just said, obviously we set meetings at the end of the meeting, but we don't want to wait a long time for, as far as the lawnmower, for sure. If we're doing that ourselves, we want to get that baby rocking.
I agree. This is Mike.
Are you guys ready to make a recommendation, or would you like to have the discussion with Buildings and Grounds? We can meet next week. I can't speak for the whole committee, but you could meet fairly quickly, I think.
Is it possible, Ms. Henriksen, to approve something pending B&G recommendation?
That's always possible, yes. That would be the will
If
of
the board's okay with the B&G approving a purchase of a lawnmower, for example, I'd be okay with that. Obviously, it's the board's decision, but.
Let me go through the list and we'll come back and have that discussion, okay? The Jeannie Lift is one piece that we'd like to go forward with. We have an older one that's quite ancient and isn't able to do everything that we need it to be doing. So this is a replacement for that one. On the stage lighting, we did get the confirmation from the insurance company, the $23,000, and I'll let Brad maybe speak to that a little bit. But that's the upgrade to the stage lighting that we would like to see. and 5,000 of that would be covered by the insurance because they've already put, to just replace what was damaged in the power outage, it's going to cost us that amount, but that would be counted toward the 23. So it'd be more of an $18,000 commitment there. We know we want to do the bleachers, but we don't have a specific bid for that yet. We know we're going to do the safety straps. The technology, we know we're going to be spending some money on that, which would be good to have opened up. Paving, I think, is a buildings and grounds discussion to how much the LED lighting could go to that. And the tuck pointing, we don't have a specific bid yet. And then the paving for the ADA walking, buildings and grounds hasn't had a chance to look at that figure either. So those are the items that are open, that are kind of out there for us to take a look at. Talk a little bit more about the lawnmower versus the tractor, and what is it that you guys are looking at with that?
The tractor obviously is an item that we thought we'd get a bid on due to the fact that we all, we need something that it's really handy to have something, a tractor with a bucket on around the school district a lot. And so we thought if we got a belly mower with a tractor with it, that we could cover and kill two birds with one stone per se. However, I don't think, and this is just my opinion, I don't think the tractor at this point is the way we want to go. I think a zero-turn lawnmower definitely is the way we want to go. It's going to save us, you know, mowing lawn this size, zero-turn compared to a tractor with a belly mower is so different in time. So the labor that you'd save using a zero-turn is going to be quite substantial. I think if we're going to eventually look at getting another something here, we'd look more at a Bobcat and not a tractor, and then have the zero turn if we wanted to go that way. I think that'd be a better investment for us. But at this point, again, my opinion, tractor is not a route we want to go.
Okay, so here's one recommendation, that you could take the mower, Bobcat, tractor discussion to buildings and grounds, and continue to have that discussion about what's the best piece of equipment to do stuff with, but ask the board to okay, if the buildings and grounds agree that the mower is the best avenue, that they would authorize the purchase of the mower, knowing that we're looking at I put the highest bid in there. There are lower bids than that, but I went with the highest number, that there would be around a $9,000 investment. If the buildings and grounds thought that that was a good idea, that you could go ahead and move on that, but not on the tractor or anything else, because that's obvious. You'd have to come back to the board for that. But if all you ended up deciding is buildings and grounds to do the mower, that we could move on that. Does that make sense to everybody? Not that you want that to happen, but that would be what the motion is, and then you could decide whether or not you wanted to support that motion.
Could we also include in that, Ms. Henriksen, the implements that were recommended as well in the same motion?
Define implements for me.
Attachments to the lawnmower, such as, you know, things that we might want to get with that to have.
Okay, and if that's not included in that 9,000, can you give me a range of what that might, what the additional costs might be for that?
Coach A, do you have a spitball range on that we can do pending?
Is that like a grass catcher or something like that?
You're on mute there, Coach A.
Sorry about that. We're talking with the zero turns, correct?
Right.
Yeah. So all the bids that I've gotten back are with the baggers, except for Richie's. So yes, I can verify that for you though.
I just don't want the board to give buildings and grounds authority to do something that's significantly beyond the dollar figure that I've sort of laid out for them. So.
Looking at the Richie's bid, they do not have the bagger on with us, so I would have.
But the others do, right?
The others do, correct?
So we know at least one of the bids is $9,000 that would include the bagger, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I thought it wasn't only the tractors that you had bids. Do you have any? I don't remember seeing zero turns with baggers.
I'm looking at the bid right now. I don't see that on here.
I think it was only on the tractor quotes.
That could have been when I had sent out.
That is correct.
Okay.
All right, I will call those companies and ask them to add the bagger on there.
Does anybody have any idea what additional cost that is?
I'm going to say based off of what Sloan's got on for the tractor, if you're going to add that to the zero turn, it's going to be the $2,500 that they have listed there.
Yeah, some of them are actually more expensive for a zero turn than it was on the tractor when I was looking into them for myself. It was about 3,000 on the bigger zero turns, fair simplicity.
Yeah, and we're not saying that we need to get those. I'm just saying if that's something that the B&G and the board wants, we want to make sure we get that in our pending expense in the board meeting.
I will make the call tomorrow. I'll make sure we've got the number on from Richie's and from Sloan's for the bagger.
Let me grab my phone. When,
Just one question. What about Dirk Dury's?
I don't see that he has one either.
I'm just looking at a calendar here. I did put in an option, not knowing how many of these things would be carryover issues, since we have so many things on the plate, to potentially have another board meeting on the 22nd. So if we had a buildings and grounds and finance next week, or at least a buildings and grounds, and could come back as a board on the 22nd, does that delay you guys too much in terms of the recommendation?
The issue, Ms. Henderson, I see with that is if we wait till then, and we can do that, don't get me wrong, and we do order something, and let's say we go with whoever, it doesn't matter, and they have to order it, let's say it's a zero turn, how many more weeks is that? And then we can always, obviously, I know Coach Aid, we said we could use yours the first couple of times. So, I mean, we just have to find someone or hire someone to mow it the first couple of times, just so the board's aware of that if we wait that long. So.
Mike, did either any one of the three that you got a quote from said that they did not have these models on hand?
The only one was Dirk as of right now, and it would take him a week to get it.
Okay.
Everyone else will be able to get it next as soon as we would approve it.
All right.
But you guys have kind of made the decision that this is something we want to take on for this year and do the mowing ourselves.
I think so, yeah.
I feel we're able to do it. I think with some of the help that we have right now, I think we can accomplish it this year.
I think the model that we're kind of looking at would be slightly underpowered with the bagger myself, just because I have a similar mower, and I don't know how often you'd plan on using the bagger, but you know, a lot of guys that have the bagger set up on those have the bigger 37 horsepower engine. So I don't know if that's something to consider. Not that we need to get the bigger one. I just don't know if we need the bagger, or if we decide we need to bag it once a year, if we hire somebody to do that.
The only, as far as my opinion, as far as bagging it, would be the football field if it gets ahead of us. And then I would definitely recommend as well, I agree with Brent, that we'd want that bigger horsepower motor on that. You're on mute, Greggy.
We don't have a problem with storage, do we?
No, we have plenty of room to store it.
Well, it sounds like we definitely want to have some further discussion about the size and power of it, whether we really need to have the bagger or not, and what options we have if we have something interim that we need to be doing. So if we could do a buildings and grounds meeting next week, the question would be whether or not the board's comfortable with buildings and grounds making that call, or whether it would wait until the May 20th or April 22nd if you wanted to have another meeting then, and then have different details to sort of take a look at.
I think that, this is Todd, I think that with the discussion that we're having here, I think that the buildings, my opinion would be that the buildings and grounds could make that decision on their own. I agree that you don't want to wait too long. That's just going to add other costs, having somebody else mow it and stuff. So I'd be comfortable with the building and grounds making that decision.
I agree with Todd.
So you could approve the purchase. Do you want to put a not to exceed? Do you want to put a not to exceed cost on it?
No.
Okay. So we'll have B&G and we're looking then at, we'll have in the motion would have the approval for the lawnmower. Any questions on the Jeannie Lift?
The only difference I see in that, Mike, was that it was just 1 year newer than the one that's correct.
Yeah, actually, they called today and were asking me a few questions about, or if you guys had any questions for him. And he was just describing the 2012 Skylift versus the 2013 Skylift. And the 2012 has new batteries in it and has a new drive motor on it. The 2013 has half the hours, much cleaner, looks nicer. The batteries were put in February, so they're fairly new. So that's $1,000 more. So it would be up to you guys which one you decide you would want to go with.
And then what do we intend of doing our old one then?
I actually asked him about if we could trade it in.
Yep.
And he goes, we'd be better off selling it outright some other way.
Okay.
We get nothing for it, is what he was saying.
I have no problem making a recommendation to approve the 13 model that's been listed for the cost.
And I do have photos too, if anyone is interested in looking at it. That's about the best I could do. It's in Green Bay. They were gonna deliver it to Madison, just to get it down here if we were interested in it, but I couldn't give them that answer until after this meeting, so.
That would be the second item on our list then, unless anybody has other questions. The stage lighting, Brad, would you mind just sort of outlining for folks? We have the cost for the replacement, but what are the upgrades and why are we looking at what would be the benefit for us to be able to do the upgrade at this time?
The couple of upgrade or the pros to it, sorry, is that it would be all LED lighting, and the control board that we'd be getting would be significantly smaller, so it should be easier to manage and store. And when the gentleman came out here to talk about it, he said that basically when that was put in, it was already outdated, what we currently have, and it's way overkill than what we're using. So I was like, oh, that's great. So, and he said that if we just go with replacing what we have, that's like a 90-day warranty. And with the upgraded one, it would be a 10-year warranty. Everything is made in Wisconsin, Madison, as a matter of fact, and they would come out and fix it probably that day. And if we went with replacing what we have and something went wrong, they don't even know if that board or parts for that would be available again. So they're basically discontinued everything that we have. So, and then if we do actually need more lighting, if we ever wanted to add more lighting, we can actually do that ourselves. He said that, you know, we can show you how to add the lights, and there's room for expansion in that too. So.
And Brad, what all do we use those lights for? What are the performances that benefit from that?
So we use them for all the band and choir concerts, and we use them for the community and summer school plays. And so I don't know if that's 10 times, you know, 10 times a year, or if I had used them for something they're doing. I'm not sure if they use how much they use them, but
Veterans program, no, that's usually during the day. Do we use it for veterans? Not too much, do we?
no. So
My big concern with it was I hated to reinvest $5,000 into just to repair an old system if it was already really, really dated. And so, and then if we don't have a guarantee it's going to last a long time, then we're going to turn around and we're going to face that new cost anyway if we want to have that lighting available. So it seemed like the best opportune time to get a $5,000 discount on a new system by making the replacement now. But again, that's your call.
yeah, and the guy that came out, he said, when I walk into a school and we're looking at lights, this is what we put in. So, and he said that he's put in countless of them and they've never had issues. I asked him about, you know, if you have issues after installing it, what's the process for coming back out here? And he's like, I've never had one do that. So the warranty would be the big part to me, 10 years versus 90 days. So that was my big thing. So any questions on that?
Okay,
Brad, you just mentioned that this one that we have has a lot more stuff and a lot more controls than what we use it for. Is the new one you're looking at have more than we need, or is this kind of their base package?
When I said overkill, so like it's in a kind of a wiring closet and it takes up, I don't know, Mike, you've seen it, good chunk of the closet, and he said that would be completely gone. So as far as the functionality, we're not using any functionality. So right now we have a board that's probably, I don't know, 2 to 3 feet long, and we use about 12 inches of it. So that's kind of what I'm talking about, is not using the functionality of the one we have. So as far as the lighting, we're not losing any lighting ability. It's just the control board that's way overkill than what we would ever need.
I would also add that, you know, efficiency wise, it's not very efficient what we're using. I mean, we can't really put a meter on it, but just knowing when they're running and that, it's got to be sucking quite a bit of energy. So this would definitely be an upgrade in that part.
Yeah, the guy did talk about how many watts it was taking, and I don't remember the specifics on it, but it was a significant amount difference.
So when I look at that list right now, our 3 recommendations would be the lawnmower pending buildings and grounds approval on the specifics of it, the Jeannie Lift, and that stage lighting. Everything else going down the list is still stuff that we'll continue to talk about, but we don't have specific numbers on yet. And even the technology, we are putting in some orders now, but we have some technology money in our regular budget. This would be for beyond that, and we'll come back and sort of lay that out once we know more specifically what we're going to be needing. And buildings and grounds would need to talk about the paving, the lighting, the tuck pointing. Maybe the only other thing we might want to get a little bit of group discussion around would be the ADA walk for paving. And do you guys have any idea of how late we could make that decision and still get it done by June 30th?
My only concern on paving the ADA pathway is if we have to put a truck out there to lift that up there, what they're proposing will not last.
Okay.
So it's going to be, from my point of view, that's going to be a constant maintenance issue. I understand it's a maintenance issue now because it's lime, and when it does rain, it creates, you know, a water rut on it. But I don't think we're going to get our money's worth of paving that ADA path if we ever have to drive a larger truck on it other than a pickup truck.
So to do it the way it would maybe have to be built to service what a truck would be, might be something to wait for a larger referendum down the road where we're doing bigger projects, and that could be blended in as a piece of it.
That'd be my suggestion, yeah.
Okay. So in terms of what we would like the board to authorize tonight, Mike and Josh and Brad, lawnmower, given approval, the Jeannie Lift, and the stage lighting. You can take them individually or whatever, but as of right now, that's the pocket of things we're looking at for end of year. But if we could start getting some of them taken care of, those would be the three that we would request you giving us the go ahead on.
I would make a recommendation to approve letting the buildings and grounds make the decision on the lawnmower. As Kenny mentioned, the 2013 model on this Skyjack or Lift, whatever it was, and also the larger bid on the lighting, the $23,000 stage lighting.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Mitchick and a second by Esser to approve the end of year expenditures as presented for the mower, Jeannie Lift, and stage lighting. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Andy, could you do a roll call?
Enish, yes. Biba,
Yes.
Drushmeyer, Drury,
Yes.
Esser,
Yes.
Mitchick,
Yes.
Shimmick.
Yes.
All right, motion passes on that. Next item, Nancy, then is the fiscal year 21 staffing plan.
And if you have that in front of you again, it's a lot of words, so I won't try to put that up there. But the big change is the rethinking about that new position. And as we had a chance to visit with staff, as well as Josh and I doing some additional conversations, you see the teachers that we're looking at, the recommendation. We asked all of the teachers to give us, to number one, express interest in the new position, and then number two, knowing that that would result in a shift at the elementary, to give us their first, second, and third choices about where they would like to be. So I think when we looked at that, Sarah Hennessy is the one who's has stepped in and said she'd be interested in that new slot. And then as we've moved people around, we've been able to honor all but 2 first choices, and 2 people would be in second choices, I believe. So in terms of where they ended up being placed after that shuffle. But the big difference is on that how we would have Sarah use her time. And we'd originally talked about a special ed with filling in with technology, and then having that special ed become more of a role as that went into the future. But as we did some talking about that, and in particular, talking with Ms. Parker about the 4K program, her first choice would be to be able to have those kids in an all-day program 5 days a week. Like I said on our note, we've really discovered over the last couple of years in particular, as those kids have just the 2 days a week, snow day schedules, other kinds of things, they're really missing out on. And this year, of course, everybody's missing out. But they do have a hard time, on all day schedules like that. And the reason we do that is because transportation is virtually impossible to try to run. That becomes cost prohibitive to have 4K every day, but just for a half a day. So most schools don't try to do that. But more and more schools are going to an all-day, 5-day week program for 4K kids. And we could get a little extra state funding. We get a 0.5 for all of those kids. We would get a 0.6 if they were here every day. And I do anticipate in the not too distant future, 4K kids are going to be counted as a full student in revenue cap and state aid purposes going forward. It's just not there right now. It was in the governor's proposal this year, and I'm sure it's going to keep coming back. But the big thing is just the quality of the time, the quality of the learning that group of kids is getting. And like I say, it can be sporadic with weather considerations coming in. And we've seen when we look at our kids do well, but the expectations that are there for those kids in kindergarten and first grade now, it would really be good for them to have the structured educational opportunities. And we're discovering that a lot of those kids are in some sort of a daycare environment, the vast majority of them anyway. So they are in some other kind of setting, maybe not as structured, maybe not as directed as what Miranda's program is for the 4K kids. We have not had the conversations with the 4K families yet. We would like to do that. And at least, a survey or offering some opportunities for them to have some insights. But for those families that still want their kids to have some connection with the parents that may be at home, there's nothing saying that they couldn't come and get their kids and have them not be a part of some of those play activities in the afternoon, but they still then would be getting that morning, the academic time 5 days a week. So their kids, even if they decided they wanted to have them home more, if they have a mom or a dad that's in the home. It doesn't cost anything for the district right now to make that shift because we have that staff piece to do there. There could be some potential financial benefit, but to me, the overall overriding extra increase is the benefit to the kids of having everyday learning. Plus then, as Sarah doing special ed and the title piece and special ed, she could also schedule those 5 days a week too, rather than intermittent days as Miranda has had to do it when she'd have to take Tuesdays and Thursdays to do the 4K program. So that's our recommendation. I'd love to, my experience in the past with making a shift of this nature, we had all of the daycare providers in when we made a move at Pecatonica, for example. And we didn't have a licensed daycare center like Highland does, but virtually all of those providers, I think we had 12 around the table that were doing, small groups of kids in their home. They said, we have so many kids to serve that, we have a waiting list. So if you have those 4Kers 5 days a week instead of just 2 days a week, we'll just fill in with the people that are on our waiting list. So we haven't had those conversations either with our daycare providers, but I think there'll be a lot of families that would be really excited about it. And I didn't want to put it on the table until we had a read from you guys about whether or not you thought it was something that was in your interest to do. Josh, you want to add anything?
No, I think you hit it pretty good. I think that, and just in the past 2 years, you take 2 years ago and the amount of snow days that we had, and unfortunately for the 4K students that year, it seemed like every snow day was on a Tuesday or Thursday. So Ms. Parker was seeing those kids once a week, sometimes not even that week. And that really had an effect on the learning. When talking to people that do everyday 4K, they're seeing a huge difference in those kids and their learning, which obviously makes sense if you go from 5 days, 2 days to 5 days. So I definitely recommend it. I think it's the right step. I think you're going to see every school go to this. So I think it's a good thing.
I'll make a motion to approve it.
I'll second it.
So we have a motion by Esser and second by Drury to approve the fiscal year 21 staffing packet, which includes all day, 5 day a week, 4K program. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Andy, could you do a roll call vote for that?
Benish, yes. Biba,
Yes.
Dreschmeyer, Drury,
Yes.
Esser,
Yes.
Midget,
Yes.
Schimick.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Next item then, Nancy, is the CISA 2020-2021 contract
And
from last year.
yes, the only change on the second piece, I think the second time I sent that out to you, it dawned on me after I had sent it out with no change, that I have been the district's reading specialist over the last 8 years. So there won't be anybody that's licensed to do that next year. That is, and I shared with you the package, $3,200, and you get 4 days on site. So that's probably the you know, that would be the going rate anyway, even if you tried to contract probably in another setting. But this too is one, given the change in where we're at, I did check in with Bryce. I shared it with him, and he was okay with that addition. But I think we're going to rely on CISAs even more if things are getting tighter fiscally. So when I look at that list of things that we contract with them, I'm not sure that there's anything that's really movable right now. That school improvement division is the bigger piece, but they do a lot of the professional development work. So when we send people to CISAs, oftentimes it's at a lower cost or no cost in some cases. I go to those meetings. That's where I get all of the updates on what's DPI expectations, assessment, accountability, a lot of those sorts of things. And I was just trying to think back when Bryce was at Riverdale. I didn't see him at all of those, but he always had Becky Gerke. His sort of curriculum person was always there, his principals. So my sense is that he would also want access to that information. The E4E, the academic planning, we get more than that $3,000 back usually in Carl Perkins money, as well as apprenticeship funds that we get back. So having somebody coordinate and run that through CISA, we recover that $3,000 in those other monies that we get. The library, we get our access to a lot of our licensing through there. Our IXL program, for example, that a lot of kids are using right now. We have math and English language arts for the whole school district through that library license, which we used to have to pay for separately, and it was like $2,700 or something. So that takes care of a lot of that library piece. Plus we get Schoology through the library contract, which are teachers that are doing the teaching through Southwest Technical College need to have access to the Schoology. And the Certainty virtual learning is a replacement for the support for the Boost program. So so like I said, I'm not seeing too many places where I could pare back. You could wait on it if you wanted to because of the fiscal uncertainty that we're in. But I'm not sure that it's going to be a big change, or there'd be things that we're going to want to do within that framework anyway. So I guess the question would be the addition of the reading specialist piece.
I'll make a motion to approve the reading specialist.
I'll second.
Is that within the context of the entire CISA, approving this whole CISA 3 contract then, Kim?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, we have a motion by Esser and a second by Mitchick to approve the CISA 3 2020-2021 contract, which includes addition of a reading specialist for next year. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Andy, could you do the roll call vote, please?
Anish, yes. Biba.
Yes.
Yes.
Drury says yes.
So does Esser.
Schimick says yes.
Yes.
All right, that motion passes. I think Andy froze on us there a little bit, but we got through it. Items for signature, Nancy. How are we
Okay.
going to take care of those things?
The CISA contract, is there anything besides the CISA contract?
Just the vouchers.
Yeah, that's Barb. Is there any, Barb and Linda, can we wait on those signatures until we're all back together again someday? Okay, we may have to have them before the auditors come in August, right? So we'll get those signatures. And on the CISA contract, I will let them know. I can sign it, and then we'll just give them a fully signed contract as we, again, when we get there. So they'll take it on my signature, I'm sure.
All right, and then dates for next board meetings then. We wanted to do building and grounds next week if we could.
And that would be the 15th, right? Wednesday? Tax day before it got delayed.
I can meet.
I'm fine anytime.
Does 5:30 work for that then?
Yeah. I mean,
5:30, okay, still?
Virtual will do, right? Same as we did tonight?
Unless you guys want to brave it. I'm going to be coming virtually.
I'm fine with doing it virtual.
Okay. And we will have maybe some updates, but you already have a lot of the, the information, but we'll sort of focus on continuing with those end of year purchases. But anything else you'd want on that agenda?
Just miscellaneous to give, I'd like to give the board updates on just stuff that's getting worked on right now.
Okay, all righty. I'll work on getting that out then. Well, the end of the week. So we'll just move over some of those. And I won't duplicate if I have, I won't duplicate the things I already shared with you for this meeting. We'll just send out, I'll just email you anything that's new beyond that, okay?
Sounds good.
Then, given the progress we made tonight, I don't think we probably would have to have a meeting on the 22nd. You guys okay with that? And then maybe we could do a finance on the 22nd. Would that work? Is that a go?
Finance, yeah, that'd work for me.
Okay, we'll do the finance on, is 5:30 okay then again?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. And then we'll have our regular May meeting on the 13th of May. Do you want to wait and see this worked actually, this worked fairly well tonight, I think, in terms of the meeting. Do you want to plan on having the May meeting at least virtually again?
I think in light of everything, I think that's the safest way. I don't see too much changing before then, Ms. Henderson.
Okay. Okay, we'll plan on that.
The only thing I can see coming before that, Nancy, is graduation. If we have anything to do for planning for that, we're right up to the end for the May 13th board meeting, but I'm not sure that there's anything the board needs to do necessarily for that either.
Well, I think, I know Josh and I talked a little bit about this earlier. The principals are beginning to try to draw together from everybody. What are you doing? How are you going to handle it? So at least regionally, we'll have a little better sense of what's happening. And as soon as we hear for sure what's happening across the state, I think, or what are there, 15 states that have already said the kids are not coming back to school. And that complicates things then too, like DPI said, to be careful about whether you want to run a summer school. If school's not being able to come back, do you really want to bring kids into the environment for summer school? There are some schools that are talking about doing a virtual kind of graduation. I'm not quite sure how that necessarily works, but I'm sure in the discussions we'll be having a conversation about that. But I think at some point we might want to do a survey out to the families and say, once we have an idea of what some potential options might be, I'm guessing one would be to try to do something in June or July. Barb's saying, yeah, June or July. Oh yeah, board members need to sign diplomas. That would need to be before May. Okay, could we do that? Does it have to be done before May 13th, Barb?
Only if graduation is still on the 16th.
Okay. And that may be just one of those, oh, guys, okay. We'd have to have you sanitize your hands first to handle the diplomas carefully, and we'll work something like that up, but that may be something that we have to bring people together, or if, yeah, or get them to your house and have you sign them and get them back. But the survey for the families would probably be, if we did something as soon as the restrictions are released, then it may be, but with a much smaller number of people that can be there. So it may only be with immediate family or something like that. Is that your, would you like to wait longer and see if you can have more? Or would you like a virtual option if that even becomes something that's optional? So right now, I don't know what the options even are for the families, but I'd like to let them know as soon as we can. And if it looks like most of the other schools are going to try to delay into mid-June, then, you know, we at least could let families know, don't plan anything for the 18th. We know we won't be able to do something then, but here are your choices, let us know. But that's kind of where we're at right now. And I don't think the likelihood of us being able to do that on May 18th, I think are slim and none, but.
Yeah. I think it was also brought up too, just a couple of principles back and forth, a discussion of, is it possible where we could do something if we could outside where you could have more people, depending on what obviously the rule or the recommendation would be by the state, you know, do something outside, not have anything inside if it's possible to hold something. So I don't know if that's an option they may would want to look at or not, but a discussion topic anyway.
And it may be that we pass on inviting the 50-year class, for example, that they might not be the ones that we'd want to have congregating, or we might do some sort of electronic music rather than bringing the kids in all, you know, and having them in a band setting. I don't know, but we are exploring, and like I say, we have to wait for some key decisions from whether or not we're even going to be open, you know, for much public travel And once that happens, then we can reevaluate. But we are planning. We're just seeing what some choices might be.
Everything changes so much every week here. It's hard to plan out 6 weeks at a time.
I think Barb and I said this week, just one day, just give us one day where you're not disrupting everything that we've just planned.
All right. Does anybody have anything else?
I got one thing there, Mike, that you asked earlier, as far as the lights. Coach A just informed me that that is actually tomorrow night. So if no one has an objection to that, I think we'll probably go ahead and turn the ball lights on tomorrow night for about 20 minutes in recognition of the spring sports.
Josh, I would just add, if you're gonna do that, to get the time out and put that out on the notifications, because I would assume that some kids would want to come up and at least drive by.
Yeah, we'll put that out there, and I would definitely stress that, we don't want you to come up to the ball field. It's not something that we're not hosting a game or anything. That was one concern I had earlier about doing it. So we want to make sure, hopefully we can get that out to everyone to, that's not the purpose of it. So.
Okay.
Barb, Linda, Brad, Mike, anything that we've forgotten along the way? Well, thanks for all of you being there. It's helpful to kind of, this essential group meets twice a week just to get together and say, hey, what's going on in your world? What do you need the rest of us to know about? What kind of help do you need? So I appreciate them giving us their time this evening too, just to stay abreast of everything that's going on. So.
Nope, your guys' work and attendance tonight too is much appreciated.
Yeah, if I could just add to that, I would just like to give a specific kudos to Miss Henriksen through all of this. Since day one, this lady has worked probably between 8 to 10 hours every day, Sunday through Saturday, and getting us to where we're at now. And I just want to say personally, I know I speak for all of you, but that she is contracted for 2 days a week, and she's working 7 right now. So she's been awesome, and I just want to give kudos to her.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nancy.
You bet.
And Josh, you too, I know you've been up here and you're always working a lot, but this is a lot tougher times than normal too. So it's appreciated.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Josh.
Well, thank you, everybody. I can't say that. You have to say that.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second. Todd.
All right, we got a motion by Drury and a second by Mitchell to adjourn. All those in favor, we're just gonna do this by voice here. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We are adjourned. Thank you, guys.
Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Be
Good
safe.
night. We'll see you guys at the admin meeting at 9 in the morning. All right. Good. There we go.